Hello, this is Michael Silva. In this episode, we are going to talk about how to figure out how much money it will take to get your security consulting practice started. The first 24 months will be the most crucial in determining the success or failure of your new consulting practice. It is essential that, prior to starting your business, you create a financial projection for these critical 24 months. The term financial projection is just a fancy way of describing how much money is coming in and how much money is going out over a specific period of time. These financial projections will tell you how much money that you will need to launch your practice and how much money that you will need to operate the business until such a time as it begins to generate enough cash to sustain itself. To create financial projections requires the following steps. Step number 1, determine startup costs. Startup costs are the amount of money that it will take to get your security consulting practice started. This requires totaling up the costs of all tools, equipment, and materials that will be required to open up your business. Initial costs for professional fees, licenses, and insurance should also be included in the total. Startup costs can vary greatly from person to person. Many people starting their practice may already own much of the equipment that they need, allowing them to reduce their startup costs. Those who have the ability to develop their own website can eliminate the substantial cost of having a website done professionally. This table provides an example of what the startup costs might be for a one-person security consulting firm that will be operated out of a home. Step number 2. Determine monthly overhead costs. Monthly overhead costs are the amount of money that it must be spent each month to operate the consulting business. This table provides an example of what the monthly overhead costs might be for a one-person security consulting firm that will be operated out of a home. Like with startup costs, monthly overhead costs can vary greatly from consultant to consultant, depending on the consultant's specific circumstances and area of practice. Because there will always be costs that you cannot anticipate, it is usually better to guess higher rather than lower when estimating costs. This table provides an example of what the monthly overhead costs might be for a one-person security consulting firm that will be operated out of a home. Step number 3, establish a personal living allowance. A personal living allowance is the minimum amount of money that you would need to support you and your family during the first 24 months of business operation. This would include the cost of health insurance. This amount can vary greatly from person to person. The beginning consultant that is already receiving a retirement pension from a previous employer or who has a spouse with a well-paying job and good benefits may require no living allowance at all. A person who is the sole provider for a young family may require a substantial living allowance in order for their family to survive. Please understand that your living allowance is not a tax-deductible business expense, but is included in your financial projections because it affects the total amount of money that you must have on hand in order to start your practice. Step number 4, creating cash flow projections. Cash flow projections show how much money will be going out and coming in on a monthly basis. Calculating the amount of cash going out is relatively straightforward. You simply add your monthly overhead costs to your monthly living allowance in order to determine the amount of cash going out. Determining the amount of cash coming in is much more challenging. Unlike estimating costs, which are generally predictable, estimating income is far trickier. To estimate monthly income, it is necessary to answer the following questions. How quickly will you be able to attract clients? What types of services will you be able to sell? What will clients pay for these services? And how quickly will you get paid after the services are provided? I wish that I could tell you that I had a magic formula for answering these questions, but I don't. The answers can vary greatly depending on the types of services being offered, the consultant's marketing and sales abilities, and present economic conditions. Based on what I have observed when helping other new consultants get started, I have found that it can take from 6 to 18 months for an independent security consulting practice to reach the point where monthly income is equal to or greater than monthly expenses. This is often called the break-even point. In some rare cases, the new consultant may already have 1 or 2 projects in hand when they start their consulting practice. This type of situation allows the consultant to start generating cash within the first couple of months of operation and is ideal. A much more common scenario is for the new consultant to have to wait several months for the first project to come in and then wait a month or 2 more before the first payment is finally received. The tables below provide an illustration of a 2-year cash flow projection for a new security management consulting practice. The monthly income figures are an estimate of what a new consultant might be able to bring in during the first 24 months of business operation. Observe that both income and expenses can vary greatly from month to month. If sales and marketing efforts are going well, you can expect income to increase over time. But income in the security consulting profession is rarely consistent and will go up and down from month to month. In most cases, as income begins to increase, expenses also increase somewhat. So the monthly expense amount in these projections have been adjusted upward in the later months to reflect this. Please note that in the cash flow projections shown on this slide, there is a negative cash flow for the first 4 months that the business is in operation. This means that the business is paying out more in expenses than it is receiving in income. In order for the business to survive, an amount of money must be on hand to pay these expenses. I call this amount the operating deficit, and in this example, it equals $24,000 for the first 4 months. It is not until the 5th month that the business breaks even, and in month 6, the business begins to generate positive cash flow. Step number 5. Determine the amount of cash needed to get started. To determine the amount of cash required to get started, you simply add your startup costs to the operating deficit. This is the amount at a minimum that you should have on hand in order to start your business. Most beginning consultants tend to greatly underestimate startup costs and monthly overhead costs and greatly overestimate the amount of monthly income that they will receive during the first year. This mistake is the primary reason why so many new security consultants run out of money and are forced to close their business and look for full-time employment. It is recommended that you take a conservative approach when estimating income and expenses and err on the side of pessimism rather than optimism when making your cash flow projections. It is far better to enjoy the benefits of reaching the break-even point early than it is to run out of money just when your consulting business is about to become a success. If you are presently working at a job, it is often better to wait a little longer to save up additional money than it is to quit now and start your practice without adequate funds. Exercising a little patience in delaying the start of your practice can increase your chances of success in the long run.